Okay.
Oh wait, we're still telling people why we're here.
I was gonna say, I was thinking of that.
And now for dramatic reading of Taken by Brock Eastman. With the narrator,
Aaron Gautier.
and I do some other parts. My name's Charles Craig.
Yeah. All right. I think that's good enough.
I think so.
Because you can edit around all
You know,
this later
yeah.
on. Suddenly, Oliver heard a strange sound. What in the world? It was men shouting, voices he didn't recognize. What was happening? Oliver cautiously crept up the trail toward his house. There was a large black transport ship hovering over his front yard. Ropes hung from the sides. There was more shouting. Someone was issuing orders to search the house and grounds. The backyard was empty, so Oliver was able to race to the garage unobserved. Once inside, he locked the door behind him and approached the next door that led into the kitchen. With a slow turn of the handle, Oliver pushed the door open a crack just large enough to see through. His dad and mom were there, but they weren't alone. A stranger stood in front of his parents. His face was shadowed by a black pilot cap, but Oliver could see the faint line of a scar on the man's cheek. He wore a black uniform, covered by a long black trench coat. 3 silver stripes decorated the upper part of his coat sleeves. That meant he was a captain. Directly above them was a patch with a silver skull and the word Ubel. Ubel? Oliver had never heard of them. What was going on? His parents seemed confused, too, or maybe shocked. They'd definitely been caught off guard at this man's arrival. And the men shouting? Something was wrong. This guy wasn't a guest. He was an intruder.
What brings you here at this late hour, Captain Vedrick?
Elliot Wick asked. Oliver's dad held his hand behind him, and his mom grasped it. Even in the midst of this frightening intrusion, their love was evident. They drew strength from each other. You know why I'm here. Captain Vedrick's voice was low and raspy, like a snake's hiss before it strikes. He approached Oliver's parents and looked around the kitchen. A satisfied smile slipped across his lips. You weren't expecting us until tomorrow. Mr. Wick nodded.
We had hoped it'd be a few days.
It would have been easier if you'd accepted our offer, Vedrick said with a scowl. But I suppose we're past that now. He rolled his shoulders and exhaled. Where are the children? Mr. Wick straightened. Standing protectively in front of Oliver's mom, he remained silent. Vedrick smirked and narrowed his eyes. We know that you picked up Oliver from the academy, and Tiffany and the twins from Berwaldetter. Oliver's chest tightened when Vedrick said his name. He didn't like the idea of this man knowing so much about his family. What else did he know? Oliver knew he had to stop him. Maybe he could knock him out and help his parents escape, but he had to find the right moment, a moment of surprise. Vedrick shouted over his shoulder. Vedrick shouted over his shoulder. Search the house. There should be 4 children somewhere around here. Oliver scowled. He was not a child. Footsteps echoed down the hall as the house was searched. This was his chance. He was ready. Oliver grasped the door handle, but almost as instantly he stopped and his grip eased. He remembered what he'd learned about balance of forces at the academy. He was clearly outnumbered and would likely be captured if he attempted a rescue. Taking a deep, calming breath, Oliver waited and watched. His heart drummed rapidly. Mr. Wick shifted backward. He was purposely blocking something from Vedrick's view. Of course, it was the book. Oliver's parents had shown the book to him when he returned. It was the one thing they had shared with him. Covered in crimson leather, the book was the prize find of their last dig. Mr. Wick hadn't let it leave his side. Now it sat exposed on the kitchen table like a beacon, calling to be seen. Vedrick moved toward the garage like a fox on the hunt. Mr. Wick looked toward the door and made eye contact with Oliver. His expression tightened with fear. Fear for his son and not for himself. Mr. Wick stepped forward abruptly. Vedrick spun around. Don't try anything stupid. The compound is surrounded. There is no escape, the captain hissed. Oliver felt his heart drop to his stomach. What could he possibly do? He had to act soon, or even he would be captured. Vedrick sighed and leaned against the kitchen counter. My superiors are quite interested in your work, you know. For some reason they feel you are essential to our destiny." He smiled haughtily. "You should have accepted their generous offer and saved me the trip to this scrap of a planet." Oliver's mom, Laura Wick, spoke up boldly. "We can't be bribed." Vedrick's eyebrows narrowed, and an unsettling darkness crept across his face. "It wasn't a bribe. You should have considered it your salary." He held out a hand and tightened the strap of his glove. "People can always be bought." As quickly as the darkness came, it disappeared. The captain shrugged. "There is no choice now."
"There was never a choice,"
Mr. Wick said. "True, I suppose, but a willing partner is always better than an unwilling one. Regardless, I've been assigned to escort you on this expedition." Vedrick's chin rose proudly. "Together, we will discover the truth." A soldier walked into the kitchen and waited for the captain to acknowledge him. The man shuddered under Vedrick's annoyed glare. "What is it?" Clearing his throat, the soldier lowered his head.
"Sir, all the bedrooms are empty."
Vedrick slammed his fist on the counter, and his watch got loosened when he did so. The darkness had reappeared. "Where are the children?"
"They aren't here,"
Mr. Wick admitted. The captain looked like a wild animal choosing his prey. His eyes bored into Mrs. Wick. "Where are they?" Mrs. Wick responded with confidence and strength. "It's true. They're not here." Vedrick angrily turned to the soldier. "Search the woods behind the house. These people never lie. It's against some code they follow." The soldier went into the living room and issued new orders. Oliver took a deep breath. He had to act now, or the woods would be swarming with Ubel soldiers. He looked around the garage for a weapon, but found nothing. They had taken everything to the Phoenix. Oliver heard Vedrick's serpentine voice again. "We know that your recent discovery has revealed the whereabouts of Ursprung." "You're mistaken," replied Mrs. Wick.
"As our report stated,"
Mr. Wick clarified.
"the discovery at Dadness Castle leads no farther than the last known location of the Glubberbiggers."
I don't really know how to say that. Glaubiggers, maybe? I don't know. Vedrick began to pace. "You speak truthfully, but there is more to the story." He turned his back on Oliver's parents. The captain carelessly opened a cabinet and then slammed it shut, continuing his seemingly unfocused yet persistent search. Oliver remained frozen. Only an inch of wood separated him and the captain, who was but 5 steps away.
"What do you mean?"
asked Mr. Wick, trying to hold Vedrick's focus. "Well," turning back toward Mr. Wick, "it was previously believed that the Glaubergers had nothing to do with Ursprung, but we know differently now, don't we?" Captain Vedrick laughed menacingly. "You underestimate my resources." Vedrick moved to the table and took the leather-bound book in his gloved hand. He held it out and cackled. "And what have we here? I saw the book the moment I walked in, but watching your efforts to block it has been amusing. As if you could hide it from me." A sarcastically sympathetic smile crossed his lips. "This book, this priceless book, is how I know the Glaubiggers are linked. The existence of this book was revealed to me just 4 days ago." Vedrick looked at Oliver's parents, who were stunned. It was clear they had not expected this. "And now I find it lying unprotected on your kitchen table." Oliver felt anger boiling up inside him, but not at Vedrick this time. Had Oliver's dad shared with him the danger they were in, he could have helped protect the book. Instead, it was clear to him that his parents had been careless. Mr. and Mrs. Wick recovered their composure. Their family's safety was all that mattered. Mr. Wick inhaled.
"Well, now that you have what you need, kindly leave."
Vedrick smiled deviously as he wagged his gloved finger. "No, I don't think so. You see, we still need you." The finger now pressed against Mr. Wick's chest. "As you know, it's believed that in an earlier time, the Federation prohibited research into Ursprung, and with a single keystroke, all electronic records that mentioned our origin were deleted. So this Ubel group wasn't part of the federal forces. They were something else. Rogues, mercenaries, thieves, something dark. Vedrick stepped away from Mr. Wick and shook the book with his hand. Discovering ancient artifacts like this book is the only way we can recreate the information that was lost. Oliver understood. His parents were renowned archaeologists who specialized in the field of origins. These villains needed their expertise. Mr. Wick shook his head.
It could take hundreds, if not thousands of years to explore all of the abandoned settlements scattered throughout the Federation. You'd need hundreds of teams working for you.
Vedrick set the book on the counter. We don't need to explore every settlement. And raising his eyebrows, he continued. We already know where the fabled path began. It started at Dabnus Castle. The second waypoint is at the coordinates you discovered in the underground chamber. The very same place you were planning on leaving for tonight. Oliver clenched his fists. This man knew more of his parents' plans than he did. He was furious. How could they keep this from him? As archaeology experts, you are essential to our mission, Vedrick continued. Your expertise will be needed many times during this expedition.
We didn't accept the money, and our decision hasn't changed,
Mr. Wick clarified. Mrs. Wick nodded her head. Money has never been a motivation for our work. How noble, he sneered. Mrs. Wick stared into Vedrick's cold black eyes. We search for truth, and its discovery is our reward. Vedrick stared with boredom at Oliver's mom and then ran his finger across the book's cover. My superiors believe, as do I, that Ursprung holds many answers. Answers that validate legends that became myths just a few centuries ago and were historical facts only a millennium before that. You see, my society's desires are not much different from yours. Oliver could see that his parents weren't buying Vedrick's motives, and neither did he. Ubel was after more than just the truth. But what? Vedrick continued his proclamation. There is no greater mystery to be solved than where we humans came from, our origin. The rewards garnered from any truth that you've discovered thus far cannot compare to what Ursprung can unlock. The darkness crept back across Vedrick's face and his fist rose in anger. And you know that, shouted Vedrick, consumed with rage. Then, a clever smile crossed his face, washing away the anger and darkness. Perhaps I should share something with you, Vedrick said. Walking across the kitchen, Vedrick turned to face Oliver's parents. Many years ago, one of my superiors came across an artifact from a long-abandoned city. Do you know what was written on that artifact? Mr. and Mrs. Wick just waited silently, paralyzed with anticipation, as they cautiously observed the disturbed man before them. Vedrick looked toward the ceiling. And I give unto them eternal life, and they shall never perish. He spoke as if the words were tattooed on his innermost soul. Do you understand those words? But the captain didn't give them a chance to answer. The secret to living forever is within our grasp. The secret to eternal youth. The handle on the other door to the garage rattled as someone, likely a soldier, attempted to come inside. Oliver turned to see and shifted awkwardly on his left foot. It twisted slightly, and his shoulder nudged the door to the kitchen. He looked back to the captain instantly, but it was too late. Vedrick abruptly turned toward the garage door. A streak of fear bolted through Oliver. His stomach seemed to turn over, and his mind went numb. Captain Vedrick's cold black eyes were all he could see, and they were locked on him. Well, that's the end of the first chapter, Charles. Are we going to read some more?
Probably not. But you can. You can check out Taken on ebook or paperback book if you're old school.
Mm-hmm. I'm very old school, Charles.
Yes, we know.
What's an ebook?
No. That is our dramatic reading of Taken. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
If you didn't enjoy it, I'm sorry. It's all we have. That's the best you can get from us.
But you can read it out loud to yourself, to your family, and sound better than we can. There's your challenge.
Even your pets. And remember, this is just the first book in a 5-book series.
Mm-hmm. That's a quintrilogy. Help, Charles.
And it spells out truth. There's Taken.
Hope. Risk.
You don't say hope first after the first one. So yes, there's Taken.
Risk. Unleash. Tangle. and hope. I'm so proud of myself.
Collect all 5 now.
Yeah, like literally right now.
And when you put them all on the shelf, it spells truth. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have all the books, it doesn't spell truth.
Yeah, it doesn't spell anything. So you really want to have all 5 of them because you want to learn how to spell, right? There we go.
Well, I guess that's it.
I sure hope so.
Bye.
Bye!